Hello and welcome to a special episode of That Jewish News Show. I'm Laura E. Adkins, the Forward's opinion editor.
And I'm Benyamin Cohen, our news director. We're flipping the script a little bit today. Normally we do some news of the week and then have our guest. Today we are so excited. We don't want to wait at all. We're going to have our guest on first. We're very excited to welcome Dr. Ruth Westheimer, everyone's favorite sex therapist, to the show. And after we interview her, we'll get to some news of the week and our usual recommendations.
Yes. If you're joining us live on YouTube or Facebook, please drop a comment to share where you're listening from.
So Dr. Ruth is,
Yes.
we all know her. We all love her. She's a multi-hyphenate, if ever there was one, best-selling author, Israeli sniper, sex therapist, everybody's bubby. Dr. Ruth, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Hi, Lori.
Hello.
Hi,
Thank you
hi,
for being here.
Benjamin. Okay.
Mazel tov. First off, mazel tov on turning 95. What did
Thank
you
you.
do for your special birthday?
I did this time decide not to have a party because my granddaughter Leora, Miriam, my daughter's, and Joel Einleger's daughter, and there was a wonderful, wonderful wedding. And I know I can't talk about another newspaper, but today I will.
You can.
You, Lori and Benjamin, there is a wonderful reportage of couple of pages with wonderful pictures in People magazine. Came out yesterday. And Leora married her fiancé. But the interesting thing for you people is that I call him from now on Safsal. Safsal means bench, because what Ilan did, his name is Ilan, he took Leora, his fiancée, he took her to Fort Ryan Park, to the bench that I dedicated to Fred Westheimer, my late husband, and that's where he asked her to marry him.
Oh, wow.
It was wonderful. So the word Safsal, can you say it, Lori?
Saftsal, yeah.
And Benjamin says
Safsal.
So the word Safsal means bench. So for me, I call him bench. But now I have to tell you one more important thing.
Yeah.
I usually don't do politics. You know that. I
Yeah.
talk about sex, not politics.
Yes.
Yesterday was a wonderful event at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, where I'm on the board. And we had my son Joel interview his wife Barbara about her new book about the environment. And it was wonderful. But what's important for you, even so I don't do politics, I did because I said on Twitter that I am very upset about the Nazi flag in Florida. And
Yeah.
guess what? Pierre, who takes care of my anything that has to do with computers for almost 40 years. Guess what? Pierre and me with my name, we got 3.5 million hits about that flag of the Nazis at
Wow.
Disney in Florida.
Yeah.
So even so, Benjamin, I don't do politics.
Yeah.
When things like this happen,
You have to get involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Speaking of which, we talked about that Disney on our show last week. Speaking of the Nazis, I know you don't like to talk politics, but I did want to I know your childhood, you escaped the Holocaust on the Kindertransport train.
Yes.
You had to leave your parents and you ended up in Switzerland, and you were eventually a sniper in the Israeli army. I'm just curious how your early experiences in life, how did that affect your outlook later in life?
Okay. First of all, the first important thing, Lori and Benjamin, the early childhood education is very important. And I had a wonderful childhood in Frankfurt am Main with 2 parents and a grandmother until 1939. In 1939, they picked up my father. The Nazis came to the apartment in Frankfurt. I was an only child, and they picked up my father and took him to a work camp. There was no concentration camp yet. And then my father wrote a postcard. I remember that postcard, that I have to join a group of children going to Switzerland so that he can come back from the labor camp to Frankfurt. And I had no choice. I was an only child. I had 13 dolls. I had roller skates. I did not want to leave my mother and grandmother. We lived with my grandmother in Frankfurt, but I had no choice. I remember that postcard where it said, Carola, that was my name then. Carola Ruth. When I got to Israel, they said, you can't be called Carola. It wasn't Israel yet, it was Palestine.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I'll take my middle name, Ruth K. Westheimer. And that's what I did. And it worked well. Dr. Ruth with the sex therapy, that worked well.
What's a tougher job, a sniper, Israeli sniper, or a sex therapist?
Both. But I have to tell you, no, I would never have known, Benjamin, that I would be a sniper in the Haganah. I went to then Palestine right in 45, when it was not Israel yet. And I went into the Haganah. I was there very short time. A pagaz, you know what a pagaz is? It's like a bomb. A pagaz exploded in Jerusalem, at the Beit HaChalutzot, at the home for students where I stayed, killed 2 girls next to me and wounded my 2 feet badly. But I was lucky. Hadassah was nearby. The doctors were wonderful. They fixed my feet so that I could be a super skier, and I could not anymore, but I could dance the whole night.
Wow.
Now I'm 95. I don't dance the whole night anymore, but I still dance a little. I danced with my granddaughter, who just got married last Sunday. So I tell you something funny. I decided, my birthday was June 4th. I decided this year, no birthday party. This year, all of the partying is going to be my granddaughter Leora's wedding with Ilan.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. I ignored my birthday, but I still talk a little about it. So it was a wonderful event last Sunday. And yesterday, we did a wonderful event of my son Joel, who is an educator who lives in Canada, in Ottawa, interviewing his wife Barbara about her new book on the environment. I last night at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, too bad that I didn't know you yet. You would have gotten an
You would have come, yeah.
I had the best of New York City. I had 70 people at the Museum of Jewish Heritage for hors d'oeuvres, because you do know, when you invite people, you have to give them something to eat, right?
Yes.
Right, Benjamin? So I tell you something. The restaurateur, David Teif, remember that name?
Okay.
T-E-Y-F. He has now restaurants kosher.
Yeah.
And he also has a restaurant at the Museum of Jewish Heritage. He gave us good food, not dinners, just a little bit something. And it was a wonderful event. If I had known the 2 of you, you would have been there. So I promise you, the next event, you're going to be there.
Okay, I'll look for my invitation in the mail.
Right.
Yes. All right. Dr. Ruth, we're going to get to some spicy questions now. One of the things I love most about reading and watching your work is how nuanced you are in your answers and don't see things as black and white. And I read a piece a little while ago where you were quoted as saying if you cheat once on your partner and don't plan on doing it again, you shouldn't necessarily tell them. Do you still believe that advice? And can you
Yes.
explain a little bit more about your
Lori,
reasoning?
Lori, that does not mean that you and Benjamin should go out cheating today.
Oh, don't worry.
All right. What it does mean is that I said, if something happens once at an event, you went to a professional meeting, it happened, and you are in a relationship, and the relationship is productive and good, keep your mouth shut. I do not believe, you are right, Lori, I don't believe in that always sharing everything. However, you don't make that a rule. Don't say to your lover, I'm going to cheat on you because Dr. Ruth said it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. But Benjamin, here, things do happen. And next question, please.
Yes. So on the flip side, you've also praised monogamy as the best path to a fulfilling sex life, whether or not that's within the context of marriage. How do you make the case for monogamy to younger people and all people in the age of dating apps where sex can feel so transactional and casual and commodified to so many people?
Well, sex should never feel so casual. Sex has to remain something special between two people. I'm old-fashioned and a square. I know things do happen, and then I say, keep your mouth shut, as you heard me. However, I do believe if you are in a relationship, especially in today's world, with all of the sexual diseases, sexual transmitted diseases, and with AIDS coming back, if you are in a relationship with one person, fantasize about other people, but keep your mouth shut. And don't do anything out of the relationship that you are in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
And if something did happen and you did have an affair one time at an event, keep your mouth shut. Yes.
So
Yes, Benjamin.
I've been married for almost 20 years.
Yes,
And
Mazel
I'm
Tov.
Thank
Say
you.
Mazel Tov.
Mazel
Mazel
tov.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you could tell me what is the secret to a long-lasting relationship?
The first thing is you have to work on it.
Mhm.
Now, what you have to do, you have to make sure that even so you do television and even so you are all busy, you have to keep time for sexual activity. You absolutely must close the computer, and once a week, see, I'm not saying every day, after 20 years, once a week, you have to tell your spouse how much you love her, how happy you are that you are in a relationship, how fortunate you are in a relationship that you don't have to worry about sexually transmitted diseases because you are loyal to each other, and try to use fantasy, and every time that you engage in a good sexual encounter, enjoy it.
Is there a
Like
time do you think
tonight.
I'll tell my wife you said that. Is there a time where you would tell a couple to get divorced? Like, is divorce ever a mitzvah?
Divorce is never a mitzvah. However, in the Jewish tradition, as you know, divorce is possible.
Yeah.
If two people really do not like each other, it's not good for children, it's not good for those two people. So how interesting, not like in the Catholic tradition. In the Jewish tradition, divorce is possible. That doesn't mean that I want people to be divorced. I was married 40 years. My daughter Miriam, her wedding anniversary is today, and she is married her daughter is just now got married. Her son already got married before. So she's married many, many years and loyal. My son Joel is married to his wife Barbara from Canada. Their daughter is a medical student, so they are married many years. And they have a son who is a computer guy. And Miriam has 2 children. Ari is the oldest one, works on computers. And Liora is the one that just got married.
Yeah.
Mazal tov to Liora.
Mazal
Mazel
tov to
tov.
everyone. Yes. So, Dr. Ruth, for those of us who are still dating, not married, it can sometimes seem like an overwhelming process, especially in this day and age. What are some things that people should keep in mind and be looking for or looking out for as they're searching for a partner?
Okay, when they look for a partner, there shouldn't be, they have to make sure that they don't become obsessed by looking for somebody. I see you nodding your head. I like that.
I agree with you.
Not to be obsessed, but just to say, look, I'm doing television, Lori, Benjamin, I'm working, and somehow never to forget to keep positive thoughts. Eventually I will find my Beschert. Eventually I will find that person that I'm going to marry and be happy with. So to keep that optimistic, positive attitude. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, I like that.
Good.
So we have a couple of listener questions we asked folks to write in beforehand.
Yes.
I really love this one from friend of the show, David Suissa, who's actually the publisher and editor-in-chief of the Jewish Journal, another publication. He asks, why is the act of holding hands so intimate?
Because anything, if you hold hands, or in your case, Lori, if somebody puts his hand on your long hair, and Benjamin, if somebody puts their hand on your no hair,
Yes, a little.
for no hair, everything can be sensitive. Everything can lead to some thought, oh, maybe tonight we are going to have a good sexual encounter with my partner. As you know all, I speak very explicitly about sex. I want people to know about orgasm. I want them to know about how to satisfy each other. But at the same time, I'm also realistic. And I'm saying there are many people who are looking for a partner.
So you mentioned sexually transmitted diseases earlier. We got another question from a listener. How would you suggest that people bring up the topic of STIs, whether that's testing or their own history, with their prospective mates?
I think with a prospective mate, you have to be honest. You have to take a deep breath and you have to say, I am very worried about sexually transmitted diseases. Please, let's use condom. And then you have to learn how to use a condom. Use it first on your finger or on a banana, very carefully, so that it doesn't tear, and say, look, this way, both of us are protected.
Yeah.
There is nothing against saying, this way we are both protected and we can engage in good sex.
So you've, over the course of your career, you've given a lot of relationship advice. I'm wondering, what was the best advice somebody ever gave you?
Oh, okay. I think the best, I worked many years with a sex therapist, Dr. Helen Singer Kaplan, at Cornell University in the city, at Cornell Hospital. And I learned from her, for example, for an Orthodox couple, as you know, he cannot lishpoch zera lashav. He can't spill seed in vain. So he has to adjust his having sex and not having an orgasm outside the vagina, but only in the vagina. And one of the things that people have to do in order to be sexually brilliant and productive is to read a few good books. Not just mine. Mine are wonderful, but there are other people. And I learned a great deal from Dr. Helen Singer Kaplan. She was my mentor. And when you learn some things about good sex, then apply it that night. So Lori and Benjamin, tonight, you have a partner, Lori?
I'm going to keep that one undisclosed for now.
Right. Good point. I make believe I didn't ask you.
It's okay.
Benjamin, you're married?
Yes.
You told me already, right?
Yeah.
So you, whenever you find a partner, and you, Benjamin, with your partner, say to yourself, we talk to Dr. Ruth, she talks about good sex. Let's put all our worries, everybody has worries. Let's put the worries outside the bedroom. Close the door and enjoy each other.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Good.
That's good. So I want to wrap things up here. So as you said we said at the beginning, you just turned 95. I'm curious, what are you most looking forward to accomplishing in your 95th year?
Okay, I'm doing a new program right now that has to do not with sex, but with relationship. It has to do that I'm going to train people to be grandparents, to adopt a child that doesn't have grandchildren, that doesn't have grandparents, not adopting legally, but adopting so that there's once a week an outing. Once a week, maybe a television program like this, maybe something that helps the relationship between a grandmother, a grandfather, and a child who does not have a grandparent. See, I'm the right person for that because at the age of 10, I left Frankfurt with a Kindertransport and I went to an orphanage in Switzerland. I was there until 1945 when I went to then Palestine. There was no Israel yet. There was Palestine. So I know what it means not to have a grandparent. I know what it means to be very lonely. And so that's my new project. Not to do with sex, but believe me, Lori and Benjamin, I still will talk from morning till night about orgasm and about sex and about good sex. And you call me and I will do this again.
Okay.
Perfect.
We'll hold you
We
to
wouldn't
that.
have it. We wouldn't have it any other way. Dr. Ruth, thank you so much. Mazal
Bye,
tov on
Benjamin.
all your simchot and enjoy your 95th year.
Thank you so very much. And one day, you people come here and visit me.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
At
Sounds
home,
great.
overlooking the Hudson. And I am in the same apartment for 45 years. Okay?
Amazing. We'll
Amazing.
coordinate.
All right. Bye, Lori.
Bye.
Bye, Benjamin.
Bye. Have a good day.
So inspiring. One of my favorite books of Dr. Ruth's. The subtitle is Dr. Ruth on Love, Life, and Joy de Vivre. And it's impossible not to be happier after listening to her speak.
I hope I have that kind of energy when I'm when I'm 95.
I know, God willing. Well, I mean, now we know the secrets. So
Yeah.
yes.
So like we said at the top of the show, normally we do some news of the week and then we have our guests, but today we were flipping things around. So now that Dr. Ruth has left the studio, the podcast, the virtual podcast studio, Laura, what's been going on? Let me catch up. What's going on with you?
So sometimes people in the office joke that I am the oldest young person they know, and I am living up to that this week somehow. I thought I had a bad case of poison ivy. Turns out at 28 years old, I actually have shingles.
Oh my
So
God.
that has been my excitement. I'm going to put on pajamas again immediately after we get off recording the video segment here. But definitely don't recommend that if you have children. They should be vaccinated for chickenpox. I was unfortunately too little when the vaccine came out to get it before I got chickenpox. And if you're old enough for the shingle shot, you should get it. It's not fun. But I think you've had a more exciting week, Benjamin. You got a special delivery, right?
Yeah, I posted on social media. My book, The Einstein Effect, comes out July 18th, and the publisher surprised me and sent me a box of books. I was not expecting to get the book so early, and so my wife actually caught my whole reaction on tape, and I posted that on social media. So that
Amazing.
was a pretty cool moment. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Well,
enough
there's
about
lots of
us. Let's talk about some news. So tell me a story you want
yeah.
to talk about.
This is gotta be the wackiest story and the most interesting story that I've read in a long time. It was all over the news this week. Um, Basically, MDMA, you may know that it's, a party drug. You may know that it's also been used in a lot of clinical trials recently to try to cure things like depression or PTSD. Psychiatrists at the University of Chicago recently got more than they bargained for when they led a double blind study on whether MDMA could increase the pleasantness of effective touch for healthy participants. Things like having a hug from a friend. What they didn't realize in this double blind study is that a Midwestern leader of a neo Nazi group, Identity Europa, was one of the participants in this double blind trial, and he took part in the study and it changed his life. He put on his exit form, "This experience has helped me sort out a debilitating personal issue. Google my name. I now know what I need to do." And obviously, when a neo Nazi writes that, you think, God forbid, they're going to shoot up a school. So they were very worried. They broke protocol. They called this guy, and he told the shocked research assistant, "I learned that love is the most important thing and nothing matters without love." So essentially, this guy signs up for a research trial, doesn't know what drug he's taking. He signed up for the trial because he got fired from his job when his neo Nazi beliefs were outed. Turns out he does MDMA, and it like cures him of his anti-Semitism and hateful beliefs, ostensibly. I don't know if you've ever done MDMA, Benjamin. My experience was life-changing, but not quite like getting rid of deeply held beliefs. Life-changing. What do you think of this story? Do you buy it? Like, what's your reaction?
I'm not a risk taker. I've never smoked a cigarette or smoked pot or anything. I drink caffeine. I think that's probably my
Hopefully
biggest
Jody
vice.
doesn't listen to me saying I've done street drugs on the podcast, but yeah.
I mean, if that's true, listen, if it's just one person that, one neo-Nazi took this drug and he's not a neo-Nazi anymore, that's great. It'd be cool if there was a way to do an actual like large scale study of this, take 100 neo-Nazis,
Yeah.
1,000 neo-Nazis and give them this drug and see what happens, because, that would be pretty cool. I mean, all of these people would obviously have to volunteer to be in that kind of a study. But I mean, imagine what kind of place the world would be if we found a cure for hatred. I mean, that's
Yeah.
pretty epic.
No, I mean, I'll probably write about this at some point, but my couple of experiences were not in a double blind trial, but you definitely feel like an openness and a kindness toward other people. And figuring out ways to expand that to others. I don't think that like having everyone take a really intense drug is necessarily the best way to do that, but
Right.
I love all of the research that's been going on in this realm. So much of psychiatric research, I feel like, is focusing on like the very acute, how do we fix this specific disease thing? And they were just studying like, how do we make already healthy people like more receptive to pro-social behavior? And I think it's just really fascinating. We know so much about the brain, but we really know so little also. So
Yeah.
it's encouraging.
so many, to your point, so many medicines that we have nowadays were not made initially for the purpose they're being used for now.
Mm,
It just so happens,
totally.
accidentally they discovered that, it also helps X or Y or Z.
Yeah, all the
Um,
time.
yeah. Obviously, another big story we've all been following this week really closely is the a tourist, what they call a submersible. It's kind of a big tube. It fits, I think, about 5 people. Went down in the North Atlantic Ocean to it's like a tourist trip to see the ruins of the Titanic. And about 5 people went in this tube, and they got lost, and nobody's heard from them, and there's been rescue crews since, I think, Monday, trying to find them and save them. I think they have enough air for a certain amount of time, but it's certainly running out. And I know the Coast Guard and lots of people from from all over Europe and from America have gone to try and rescue these people. And it brought up, we were discussing in the newsroom, it's not inherently a Jewish story, obviously, but we always like to find the Jewish angle. And our Mira Fox wrote a piece this week talking about, what happens in a situation like this where you don't know if someone is alive or dead, or you may never know if you're not able to, find a body. What happens with like the laws of mourning? So like the Talmud actually talks about this. Like, what happens, if a woman's left at home and her husband gets lost at sea,
Right.
is she allowed to remarry, or, if you can't find a body, when does Shiva start? There's
Yeah.
all these interesting rabbinic questions that are brought up, in a situation like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked the adage from the Talmud that Mira pulled, which she said the prevailing rule is that the missing person is alive until proven dead. In other words, maintain hope. There's been so much discussion about this story online, and I understand why some people have Schadenfreude of like, oh, all these rich people did a dumb thing and now their lives are in danger. But I've never been able to relate to that attitude. And I think it's so beautiful that Jewish teachings have things to say about modern situations, like always maintaining that hopeful attitude. Doesn't always solve the problem, but is just a good way to approach things. But
Yeah.
I think their heir is almost reaching the time where they said that there would be no chance, but I'm gonna maintain the hope for a few more hours. But
Yeah.
we have another Nazi story, I think,
One
right?
more. We like to make sure we have our fill of our quota of Nazi stories. This one final story this week, which was pretty bizarre. There is a lake in Wyoming called Swastika Lake, and a bunch of people wanted to, not surprisingly, wanted to change the name. But I should
That
point out,
sounds reasonable. Why
it
did it
was
take
not.
so long?
It was named Nazi Lake before the Nazis. It was named
Swastika Lake.
Swastika Lake before the Nazis. It was, I in reading about this, I learned something that, the swastika before the Nazis co-opted it. It's a symbol in many cultures of actually a peace and
Yeah.
positivity. And so a lot of things are called swastikas. And then, the Nazis co-opted that symbol. So this lake was named, I think, in the 1920s, even, before the Nazis took the symbol as their own. So people in Wyoming were voted to rename it. There was one person on the commission, the county commission, who did not want to rename it, and his defense was that, it's a teachable moment. We should keep
Right.
it so that we can, not to whitewash our history. What are your
I think it being there for, almost 90 to 100 years after the Holocaust is enough of a teachable moment to point to. But
Yeah. So they're going to rename it. They voted on Tuesday to
what's the new name?
the new name is Night Lake. That's a Knight.
I
Night
thought
Lake,
it
and
was an Elie Wiesel reference, like Nights, like the Holocaust memoir.
it's Night Lake. It's named after Samuel Knight. He was a professor and a dinosaur enthusiast, and for many years he was known as Mr. Geology in Wyoming. So they're naming
Maha
it after.
Kesher, what's the connection? Are there dinosaur bones in this lake?
There are dinosaur bones in that area of
Okay,
the country.
fine. We'll give it to them.
Yeah. All right,
Nice.
Laura, let's give a sneak. What do we want to tell our listeners? You want to give them a sneak peek of what we're going to do next week?
So, as you've probably read, last week the Pittsburgh synagogue shooter was found guilty on all counts. The most moving part of the reportage that I read was one of the women who had survived the shooting was in the courtroom, just like nodding along to every charge that was read out. There was just that small feeling of justice, but the penalty phase begins on Monday and is expected to last a while. And we're going to discuss more in depth next week with some of our friends and colleagues in Pittsburgh who have been covering this for the local Jewish papers for quite some time. We're going to discuss more in depth next week with them. But
Yeah.
before we leave you, we have our recommendations for the week, as always. And we're going to return to Dr. Ruth. How could we not? I mentioned, I think earlier in the show, one of my favorite of Dr. Ruth's many books is called The Doctor is In, Dr. Ruth on Love, Life, and Joy de Vivre. It's just so inspiring the way that she takes the traumatic moments in her childhood, which were horrifyingly traumatic, and makes a case for why those moments specifically have made her and shaped her into the optimist she is today.
I got to check that out. My recommendation is also Dr. Ruth related. There was a really amazing 2019 documentary on Hulu called Ask Dr. Ruth, and it goes through her whole life, the Holocaust, Israeli sniper, sex therapist, all the people that didn't like when she was, talking about sex so publicly, and now her life as a grandmother and a great grandmother. So it is a really fun documentary and interesting called Ask Dr. Ruth, and it's available on Hulu.
Awesome. Well, looking forward to next week and discussing all these serious topics. It was nice to have a nice light one. So, Benjamin, enjoy your books and the farm life, and I'll see you on Slack, and we'll see you all next week.
And get well soon, Laura.
Thank you so much. I'll try my best.